it's so much more effective to focus on a small, sustainable goal, because I see that as really the launch pad for continuous sustainable change. So if we can break down our nutrition patterns in a way that's supportive and we can make small changes, we become more sure of ourselves, of our own ability, which is considered our self-efficacy for making changes. And that will just lead towards so much more long-lasting and more profound change over time.
The goal of the Best You podcast is to allow you to feel confident about what you need to do, why you need to do it, and how to do it in order to get closer and closer to your best you. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best You podcast. I'm super excited today to be joined by the one and only Kim Plessel. Kim, I just want to start off by saying thanks so much for spending the time with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. I've been really looking forward to this one. And so a lot of people listening and have known that in quarter one of 2022, I had a very specific personal nutrition education or nutrition expertise goal that I set out for myself, where I started off the beginning of the year kind of identifying 9 different nutrition books and at least one different podcast a week that I wanted to read and dive into and learn more about. And so I feel like over the last 3.5, 4 months, I have really heightened my own nutrition education, and I've tried to take in a lot of varying perspectives and points of view as to what is the appropriate approach. And so I'm really excited to bring you on. And the way I got made aware of you is because you are on the nutrition advisory board for Orangetheory. And so one of our learning our modules as coaches, we got to learn from you and got some great advice and learning tips from you to be able to share with members. And a lot of people who listen to the podcast are Orangetheory members as well. So I know they're going to be really excited to hear that and to learn more from you. And just everybody who's listening is a goal-oriented, fitness-focused person. So they're going to get a lot today. But basically kind of the way I want to start today is if somebody right now is like, there's a lot of things that are wrong with my personal nutritional habits right now. If somebody feels like they're kind of all over the place and they're not exactly sure where to start, is there a particular thing that you recommend people starting with, whether that's a specific meal, whether that is taking out certain things, or what is maybe the first thing that you would recommend somebody to start with if they're unsure of where to start because a lot of things are wrong?
Well, I really appreciate just even how you frame the question, because I think it's so much more effective to focus on a small, sustainable goal, because I see that as really the launch pad for continuous sustainable change. So if we can break down our nutrition patterns in a way that's supportive and we can make small changes, we become more sure of ourselves, of our own ability, which is considered our self-efficacy for making changes. And that will just lead towards so much more long-lasting and more profound change over time. So typically when I meet with someone, the first thing I ask is, tell me about your life. So I asked them about their current nutrition patterns, just to get an idea of where we're starting, because that is very different amongst different people. And I also want to appreciate not just what they're eating, but more of their lifestyle. So what's influencing their time? Who are they eating with? How are they eating? Typically, when you start having someone share their story, they'll identify what they want to change or improve naturally. And so that's usually the best place to start because it's personally meaningful to them. But even beyond that, usually when they identify something they want to change, the thing that I'm listening for is what's leading up to the vulnerability to the reaction that they're focused on. So most of us have tried different strategies in our life. We've tried different diet patterns, and we're really good about identifying what we do wrong, right? So instead, it's a matter of I ask them, well, what leads up to that reaction? Almost validating that I understand the vulnerability that they're going into those situations in, because then that helps to reinforce and open up more doors to be proactive. So again, I focus more on what to do, and I try to usually preempt the vulnerability and have them thinking about what might have led up to the reaction that they're trying to change.
So you're saying they'll identify the thing that they might want to change first, and you ask why the less than or the undesirable habit that they're doing, why that comes up in the first place.
And sometimes they may not even have that awareness, or as soon as they start explaining it or talking through it with someone that's listening to them, it comes up for them naturally. So an example would be, I had a client, she ate so clean, so well, breakfast, lunch, most of her day. And then all of a sudden around 3-4 o'clock, she's ravenous and she was going into the pantry and her food of choice was boxes of cereal. Okay. And she felt anxious and wanted to change that. But one thing that came up as she was sharing that is she was completely under eating all day. And so part of that was kind of thinking about, well, what can we do earlier so that you can balance out your nutrition a little bit, focus on what to add, because that will reduce your vulnerability to reacting. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so there's something else in there that I think you identified. She didn't know necessarily, or did she know she was under eating?
No, she hadn't seen that pattern. Otherwise, or if it's emotional response or a stress response, a lot of times people will hone in and just focus on what they're doing wrong. And so a lot of times it gives them a lot of support just to kind of back up and just see it a little bit from more of a curious, kind of a beginning, a learning perspective versus a judgmental one.
Yeah. Well, let's say somebody then is experiencing, the issue might be different from person to person, but she was experiencing being ravenous at 3 or 4. And I think a lot of people might experience maybe the same trigger or certain other triggers that are undesirable, and it's because of a pattern or a lack of nutritional intake or whatever. Like how can they identify something that they might not even know that they're doing wrong or that they're not doing, if that makes sense?
Well, I mean, a lot of us develop these habit loops, right? We have these cues, we have a reaction or a behavior, and we're getting some kind of reward. So some of it is kind of appreciating that process. So a lot of times working with a dietitian or someone that specializes in nutrition, you can highlight, well, you might, for her situation, she was under eating. For others, it might be that they just need, to be more consistent in spacing their protein throughout the day, which is going to help them feel less ravenous, a little bit more satiated. For others, it might be all about trying to build back in some healthy, beautiful whole foods like fruits or vegetables, and just trying to get that fiber so they feel more content. And then they're not kind of reacting and going more towards some of the sweets or some of the cravings that they're having.
Yeah. Well, now that you talked about her under eating and then being ravenous at 3 or 4, and then you talked about kind of having maybe the well-balanced meals of protein and fiber. So let's kind of dive into meal timing a little bit and what you feel like might be the most desirable or not most desirable, the approach that works for the most amount of people when it comes to meal timing and maybe the quantity or size of the different meals at those times.
Yes. Well, so it's helpful to sometimes, back up and use some simple tools, right? We're really good about deconstructing nutrition. But we don't eat macros, right? I mean, it's wonderful if someone thrives on that and wants to go into the details. It can be a really great opportunity. But for a lot of people, they get overwhelmed, especially when they start navigating their work schedules, their home schedules. And so sometimes starting with just the plate method is something that just simplifies it. And you can kind of think about that balanced plate. So if you're more athletic minded, they actually have the athletes plates that were developed by the US Olympic Committee and the University of Colorado. So those are kind of nice because they'll break it down into an easy or weight maintenance plate, a moderate training day, or a high training day. So that kind of gives you a visual of how to build your plate. Otherwise, you can use something along the Harvard's Healthy Eating plate or My Plate. So the way I like to describe this to my clients who want to keep it really simple is that you, in essence, have 3 plates a day. And so if you are more of a grazer, sometimes it's helpful to kind of think about, like, if you start with something like, let's say you grab a piece of fruit and then you're hungry an hour or two later, a lot of times it's going back to that breakfast plate. Well, what didn't you eat yet? So then you kind of like balance out the plate through the different eating episodes you have in the morning, and then the plate resets at lunch. So then that way we don't get stuck on just one section of the plate, right? Which is historically what we'll do. Right. So using a simple plate method just to kind of think about as 3 plates a day and trying to make sure that you're balanced and you have something from the plate throughout that time period will help guide snacks. So a lot of people ask, what are the healthiest snacks? And my first question is, well, what didn't you eat yet at that meal? Finish that meal. It's really helpful for kids. Like a lot of times with my teenagers, if they're hungry, we kind of know kind of what they've snacked on or what they had for lunch initially. And if they're hungry late afternoon, well, finish your lunch and then have what you want, And so that's something that can help to simplify very complex nutrition plans if someone doesn't want to count macros or do a full day plan. So simplify it. Now, portion wise, typically, to keep it simple, I always encourage people to have a palm of protein at their meals because that's going to meet kind of their protein spacing needs, especially if you're trying to build lean muscle or just kind of become, more fit with your body composition. So spacing protein throughout the day is really important to help people build lean muscle or to keep their lean muscle while they're losing weight. A palm of protein is going to probably be visually pretty close to the recommendations of, what someone would need spaced throughout. So most people need between, for women, at least 15, maybe 20 grams of protein to 25, 30. Men, probably closer 25 to 40 grams of protein if they like to get a little bit more detailed. But again, if you can at least use the visual, that's helpful. And then building half the plate from plants. So whether or not that's all vegetables or if it's a mix of fruits and vegetables, but really trying to put in those nutrient-dense foods because that will help, one, give you great nutrition, but it also is that fiber that a lot of us are lacking in our diet that helps to help our stomach stretch so that our fullness hormones are released and we feel more content on less calories because a lot of people are trying to navigate, their caloric needs throughout the day. So visually taking half the plate from plants, at least a quarter plate from protein, at least it's a great start. And then you have your quality carbs, your healthy fats that you can incorporate as well.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So palm of protein, half plate from plants, a quarter from the healthy carbs and healthy fats. That's great. And then, like you said, I think one of the things that, I coach people through a 10-week transformation program, and so many people are snackers throughout the day. And sometimes people snack twice a day, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. Sometimes it's one day. And we often get the same question of what should I eat? And like you said, I think that's a great way to think about it. Like, okay, which of those 3 pieces did I not have in my actual meal? And how can I just close that gap of the thing that I had not eaten? I think that it's really important for people to sit down and, maybe name what a couple of healthy protein snacks are if they missed that from the meal. Name a couple of healthy fat snacks if they missed out from that meal. Maybe a couple of healthy veggies or fruits or whatever it is if they missed that from the meal. And that way they can piece all the important components together so that when they do go to snack, they're actually fueling themselves appropriately and in a way that's satiating as well.
Exactly. Well, and I love the concept of intuitive eating. So I've worked as a dietitian for over 20 years, and there's, a real stigma around dieting and weight cycling. And so a lot of times if someone is just fatigued of food tracking, intuitive eating is a wonderful strategy that just helps to raise awareness of your hunger and your fullness cues, right? That's part of it. And so just having people ask themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry are you? And, if they tell you that on, 1 is hangry. So I'm like, well, okay, that's vulnerability, right? So then you go back to kind of helping to move earlier in the day so that someone's not vulnerable going into when they're making their food choices. Trying to help them raise awareness just to check in. And then if someone is trying to, maintain weight, they're trying to find a satiety cue of satisfied. And I explain that kind of like you'll feel voluminous, you'll feel content, but you're not going to feel heavy, right? Like there's not going to be a heaviness in your stomach. That's typically weight maintenance for a lot of people. Weight gain is the extremes. I'm vulnerable, and then I'm trying to survive, and I will react and go to being overly full, which is that range from, content, full 7 up to 10, where there's pain. So trying to just have people ask themselves, before you eat, just check in. Are you truly hungry at your gut level? And then also about 10 or 15 minutes after you're done eating, when the satiety hormones have had time to register in the brain, how content are you? And if you're trying to lose weight, can you move towards neutral or just a gentle satisfaction? Or if someone tells me I'm eating till I'm an 8, well, let's try to move it to a satiety fullness cue of 7. Just trying to work them back in and just be back in their bodies. I've had clients of all ages, ranging between, 20 up to 75, successfully lose weight just cueing into their intuition, without really making a whole lot of other changes, which is just kind of raising their awareness around what their body's telling them.
Yeah. I'm interested about that and people's ability to be honest with their intuition, in the sense that I think a lot of people can think they're hungry, and a lot of times that might just be because you've trained your body to eat at a particular time. If somebody had a huge lunch and then it's 6 p.m., they might not actually be hungry, but they always eat dinner at 6 p.m. And so they're thinking that they're hungry. And so how, through your experience, how good are people at being honest with themselves about the intuition of their level of hunger, and not just convincing themselves they're hungry so they eat?
I totally hear you. Most people, when they pause and just appreciate where they're at, they can reconnect with their bodies pretty successfully. If you ever watch a young child eat, they're in essence doing this. You're incredibly intuitive until about the age of 5. And then, we go to school, we have influences of what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat. And so at some level, it's looking at how do we reconnect with that wisdom that we innately have when we're young. Now, some of my clients have shared that they don't necessarily feel hunger, fullness very clearly. Sometimes it shows up as mood or the ability to concentrate. So giving them permission to frame this intuition, this kind of like hunger and fullness scale in their own terms is helpful, because sometimes it'll take a little bit of time to relearn that. And for those that want to actually do the food records for 1 to 2 weeks and just identify their patterns, that can be helpful too, if you frame the food records just as a tool to learn from, right? While they are trying to reconnect with their intuitive hunger and fullness. And then what we do is we see how the body responds. And that will give you more clarity over time.
Okay. Gotcha. One of the things I want to jump into is the fuel sources that our body uses when it comes to exercise, because this is something that I'm fascinated by, because I think we, as a trainer and somebody in fitness, I think we learned that you want to make sure that you have kind of some carbs right before, like relatively in near proximity of when you go to exercise, so that you have that fuel source. But then there's also this term that I feel like is gaining a little bit in popularity called metabolic flexibility. And that is your body's ability to recruit carbs for energy and then go to fats for energy and kind of back to carbs, and depending on what fuel you have in your body and what's available. And so I guess the way I want to start off asking the question is asking and getting further explanation as to what metabolic flexibility is, and whether or not a lot of people actually have the ability to be flexible in recruiting the different energy sources. I know it's kind of a lot, but.
Well, I think it's great that just trying to appreciate what's happening in the body when we all know that food is fuel, right? So, but a lot of times what people don't realize is those foods have to be converted into an energy currency that the body can use. And a lot of us, if you've studied, nutrition or, with fitness, is ATP or adenosine triphosphate, right? So that is the energy currency of the body. And so there's going to be, different metabolic energy pathways that can fuel our exercise. There's two that are anaerobic, or in the absence of oxygen, that we typically use, for very high intensity, short bursts of energy. So that's going to be, those are kind of like the first 10 seconds up to 2 minutes. But then the energy pathway that I think you're referencing and that most of us are familiar with is the aerobic pathway. And so a lot of us know that when we're using a lot of oxygen, we're going to be potentially oxidizing fat for fuel. And then as the intensity of exercise increases, the fatty acids aren't quite as quick. So then the body will go to stored glycogen or glucose in the blood to use carbohydrates for fuel as our heart rates increase and as our intensity increases with our exercise. When you're thinking about metabolic flexibility, really what it means is that your body's going to use the fuel that you give it, right? So if someone is eating a higher carb diet, they will use carbohydrates for fuel. If someone also wants to trial the keto diet or, significantly reduce the carbs in their diet, they'll be eating naturally more fats. So their body will use more fat for energy production. Now, there's a couple important things to think about with application with this, right? Your body should be able to use the fuels that you are providing it. But if you are doing this for weight loss, oxidizing fat or using fat for fuel does not automatically equate to body fat loss. Okay. And that's a really important message, because I think there's a lot of confusion about that. Our body fat is the way that we store extra calories. So if we are eating enough calories, regardless if it's all from fat or a mix of different macronutrients, we don't have any reason to tap into the stored fat energy fuels that we have, right? So then it becomes more of a question is, what goal are you seeking in approaching metabolism, right? So if you're doing high intensity workouts, if you're going to Orangetheory, likely your performance based on the consensus of the research at this point, it might be impaired if you are not having carbohydrates consistently in your diet. So, right now, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the American College of Sports Medicine still highlight the important role of carbohydrates to fuel high intensity cardiovascular activity. So now there's some interesting metabolic adaptations that we're studying with, higher fat for ultra or long distance athletic events. But for the everyday athlete, you really want to try just seeing, how do you feel? Like, what does your heart rate do? What's your perceived exertion if you forgo eating before you work out, or if you're prioritizing fat over carbohydrates as your primary fuel that you're consuming? So this can be a very personal journey. Right now, typically you'll get a better exercise performance and feel better about it. I would assume with a little bit more carbohydrates in your diet.
Yeah, it's funny. Because right now, one of the things I'm experimenting with just every so often, not every single day, but every few days, is some fasting. And I personally, I've eaten well and had a really good, healthy diet for the most part over the last 5 years. And I kind of at the point where if I run at a high intensity, I can run at a high intensity having fasted for a decent amount of time and not really be affected by it and still perform pretty well. But if I try to do a very explosive exercise, like a clean or a heavy back squat, having fasted, then I'm a little bit more affected by it and might get a little bit lightheaded. And that's where I'm like, okay, I know this is kind of what my body needs when I do this. I might need some more carbohydrates when leading up to a heavy lift rather than maybe necessarily a higher intensity run. And so like you've touched on, so much of this is just a personal journey and learning about your body and how it feels having eaten certain things at certain times leading up to exercise.
Exactly. So it's a matter of kind of appreciating the science, but then also testing it for yourself. So if you go into fasted cardio, just know that you are, in a negative protein balance. So consuming protein after you're done working out is going to be a little bit more timely and needed for someone that goes into it without eating anything before they work out. Mm-hmm. You want to protect that muscle, right? Otherwise, you can look at the intensity. If you your running pace or, your heart rate at a certain pace. I'm currently training for Twin Cities Marathon. And so I personally cannot go out running without any kind of fuel. So yeah. I am much more productive if I have an easily digested carbohydrate before I go and do, more of like even long runs, it's going to fuel me better. But, if you're someone that has a low intensity, moderate activity, maybe power walking, or you're really going out for a more slow, steady run, then that's totally up to you. I mean, you can consider doing something along those lines, but it's more of that, like, yes, explosive, you're needing that quick energy, or you're trying to hit those high intensity intervals. Carbohydrates are going to help you have less perceived exertion. They're going to also be that energy source that your body can pull from, so that you don't hit the wall, as quickly, and you'll be able to increase the intensity and duration more.
Right.
One of the things I want to touch on is you talked about how a lot of people improve their eating from intuitive eating. This is probably along the same lines, but kind of stress eating and emotional eating is where I want to get into, just because I know that's so many people's, one of their Achilles heels is they'll be fine throughout the day, and then something happens in the evening and they have a whole bag of potato chips because they're stressed out, or they have a whole bar of chocolate because they're really emotional or something like that. And so what is maybe the conversation that you have with somebody look like and sound like when they do struggle with emotional eating or stress eating?
Well, first off, I always look to see if there's any vulnerability patterns first, right? Okay. So part of it is, how do they set themselves up for success throughout the day? Then, typically if we've trialed some of those strategies and they're still struggling with the stress or the emotional eating, usually try to help them land and start with some diaphragmatic breathing, just to slow down that stress response. So a lot of times, if you can get someone to do really deep belly breathing, that engages the diaphragm, which actually engages the vagus nerve, which touches all the organs and kind of actually helps to calm down that fight or flight response. So trying to get someone to have 5 to 10 really deep belly breaths, just to kind of pause for a moment and reduce that kind of immediate reaction. And then, of course, if we can change the behavior, great. Like we talked about those habit loops, there's a cue, there's a behavior, and there's a reward. And so we need some kind of outlet. We're looking for the release, right? When we're eating emotionally or stressed. And so if we can't change the cue, can we change the behavior? So is there a little bit better reaction, whether someone can, use a non-food related behavior that will give them that release. If they're not ready to do that, or it hasn't worked for them, then trying to identify some of the foods that they can enjoy that are a little bit healthier, that meet that need. That's another strategy that you can help people with. And then if they're like, no, Kim, I just need this. Respect that. There's days I can totally relate. Then what I try to do is encourage them to focus on how they eat it. So this is where you can move more into mindful eating. And so, a lot of times if someone comes, and you never want people to be frustrated or feel bad if they decided to indulge, right? So a lot of times I tell them, I understand that, but so how did you change it for yourself? It's not yes or no, it's how. And so were you able to, one, just reduce the stress response through breath work, but two, can you engage all of your senses? So mindful eating is more about seeing, smelling, touching, listening, and really trying to savor the food that you are craving in that moment. Because if you can change how you eat it. I truly believe, and I've seen this work for many people, is that you can stay enchanted almost with that experience. You're not going to become so disenchanted and judgmental. So you feel like you're still moving forward on your goals. And so I talk about this enchantment, disenchantment principle. So I'm like, how could you enjoy this and still feel like you're still enchanted with it? You don't feel like you've kind of washed the day away. You gave your body what it needed, or maybe it's something fun. Like food could be involved in celebrations too. And what are we going to, if my 14-year-old daughter makes a beautiful dessert because she loves to bake, I mean, of course I want to connect with her and savor that. And you can do that in a really successful way. That's not going to undo a whole day of supportive eating, right? So kind of shifting how they eat and helping them to kind of stay enchanted with that experience can be really effective, especially for sustainable change. Because as soon as someone feels like they're off the diet or they have had any kind of failure in any way, that's usually a trigger to give up everything, right? So I've really encouraged people to just change how they're responding, because then they're still succeeding, and then the momentum will continue.
Right. No, I think that's a really great point, because I know so many people do have that throw in the towel, especially if it's towards the end of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, had a bad meal and they're mad at themselves and screw it, I'll blow it out the rest of the week, and then next Monday I'll get back to it. But one of the things that I talk about is when the quicker you can self-correct, the better it is. But I think that I really liked the phrase of kind of still having enchantment with the meal and really realizing, why you might have done it and trying to associate some positivity towards it.
Right. And then you can also remind them that their plate resets, so the day's not done.
There you go.
If you go out for lunch, dinner resets. How can you balance it out later in the day? It doesn't even have to be at the meal. You can. It's really nice because it's like that safety net that a lot of us need, right? When we don't want to. The all or nothing is what will undo everybody. In 20 years of doing this, that is the number one challenge to help people overcome, so that they can have real, sustainable, life-changing improvements.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. I could not agree more. All or nothing is. I recorded a podcast probably a few weeks ago about how you should not be an all or nothing person, because if you're all or nothing, nothing is going to come. It's inevitable that nothing's going to come. So, but if you guys are stress eaters or emotional eaters at all, and you did not take notes, then you need to go back and take notes, because you need to identify vulnerability patterns that you might have where you're not setting yourself up for success. 2, maybe before you go into it, take some time doing some diaphragmatic breathing. 3, if you can't change the cue, change the behavior. I talk about one of my clients. She would get stressed out from her kids. And so instead of having a bottle of wine, we had her take a bath to get that same stress relief. And then step number 4 is think about how you eat it, not just necessarily what you eat, how you eat it, through mindful eating, through seeing, smelling, listening, savoring the food, and trying to associate some enchantment and positivity with it. So that was awesome. I know that's going to benefit so many people. Now I'm interested in a couple of different mom topics, because I help coach a lot of moms, and I know a lot of moms are listening, and I just think it's beneficial for everybody. Let's say somebody has kids who are picky and they're trying to be good nutritionally, but they're like, I don't really want to make 2 meals, one for me and my husband and one for the kids. What's the best way to approach that? So maybe my kids either have buy-in to the healthy meal, or maybe I can just cook it in a way to where it doesn't take me much more time, or tell me how a good way to approach that.
Well, I totally hear their pain. I have 2 kids, and it shifts and evolves over their lives. And so, first off, if you are a mom with young children, especially, infants, right? Or even if you're breastfeeding. I mean, if the more varied our diets are, especially, there's research that's shown that women, while they're breastfeeding, if they're eating more of these vegetables or bitter foods, those toddlers will accept those foods easier later. So that's really intriguing. So it kind of starts with, pregnancy and through the breastfeeding, we have a lot of opportunities. And then, a lot of times, picky food behaviors really are pretty entrenched by the age of 4. So if you have toddlers, the more that you can introduce a variety of foods, the better. And there's some research that's shown even like different textures by, safely, obviously, depending on where your child's developmental feeding is at. But 9 months, you're trying to start introducing different textures, because textures, let alone flavors or aromas, there's lots of different reasons for children to either accept or deny different foods. So if you can start earlier, fantastic, because you're going to have better odds. So, and I recognize, time is of the essence when you have toddlers. I remember those years. And, it would be amazing how, the day would go by. And it's like, how do I balance all of this? Heaven forbid you need to take the children grocery shopping, right? Because that's a feat in and of itself. So starting young, trying to get them involved in cooking is really smart, because as children are engaged in cooking with you, and there's a lot of really kid-friendly cooking utensils. I had utensils that my children could use safely at 2 years of age, 2 or 3. And I would just give them like the little things to cut, just to, one, it gave us something to do together, right? But it also, that you watch children, they'll just start eating if it's in front of them. And so that helped to introduce new foods as well. And then it really comes down to setting the stage at the family table. So research has indicated that children want to emulate what they see, right? So we can't expect children to eat foods if we're not doing it ourselves. And so modeling the behaviors that you want to see in your children is a huge opportunity. But then the emotional tone around the meal is the other really important component. So you want it to be enthusiastic. You want it to be fun. If it's more authoritative, you're going to sit here until you eat this, there will be more resistance. So if you can kind of model those behaviors, just, simply have those new foods on their plate, but fill their plate with other things that they're going to eat, because then you're not going to get into these struggles around them eating anything at all. So a lot of times, I would fill their plates with the fruits and veggies I knew they would eat. And then I would put, the new food on their plate as well. Try to keep it neutral, eat it with them, be enthusiastic and a little dramatic about how amazing it is and what a wonderful cook you are. And children will be much more accepting. But it does take, 10 or 15 positive exposures until a child will start to change their acceptance of a food. So don't give up. Just continue to do it. My son surprised me years later. All of a sudden started eating roasted cauliflower, and it just blew me away. I actually wasn't putting it on his plate, and I should have been, right? It's kind of like, because I would just sit there and be like, oh, I love this so much. And he actually was curious. And so trying to have fun with it will open up a lot of doors and be a lot of supportive for the moms listening and the dads listening today.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think a lot of those things, like you said, the food preferences are determined at an early age, sometimes during pregnancy or during breastfeeding. And I really liked, setting the tone at the family dinner table, not in just what you eat, but also how it's gone about and how it's done. I think that's really important from a parenting perspective as well. And kind of from the same tone of the parenting perspective of nutrition. And especially because, like you said, you have a 14 and almost 16-year-old son, a 14-year-old daughter, and almost a 16-year-old son. I'm very curious. The way that people are growing up now is even way different than when I was a teenager. And there's so much more out there that I think gets people emotionally charged when it comes to body image and things of that nature. And I think people's eating disorders, the percentage of people who have eating disorders are probably just going up and up. And so how do you, as a parent, approach the balance of, I want to make sure I encourage healthy eating and, get them to eat healthy, but at the same time, I don't force it too much to where they think that their self-worth is based off of how they look and things like that. So where's the balance of that as a parent? How does that play out? We'll be back to the interview in just a second. But first, I wanted to share a quick testimonial from a past participant of the 10-week transformation program. I started running the 10WT in the beginning of 2020 and have had over 150 people and counting go through it. And they've seen amazing results both inside and out. If you're inspired to join after listening to the testimonial, then go to nickcarrier.com to learn more. We'll get back to the episode in just a minute, but first, here's what they had to say.
Hi, my name's Vanessa, and I joined Nick's 10-week program because I really wanted to challenge the stereotype that college kids are perpetually exhausted, stressed, and running off of mac and cheese and PB&J. Since joining Nick's 10-week program, I have had the goal of just incorporating more consistent exercise and working out 4 to 5 times a week. And so I've been able to do that. I hit my goal of getting in 50 workouts over 10 weeks, which is really exciting. And my favorite part, though, about the program is the things that I've taken, how I've changed outside of the gym because of what I've done inside the gym. Like, I am a more disciplined, more focused human being, and I know that when I say that I'm going to do something, the follow through is going to happen, and that's things that I've learned all through the 10-week program. And so that's been my favorite part. You should join Nick's program. Like, you need this.
That's such an important question. And, the risk, eating disorders can develop really at any point, but the window of time is really, I would say, 11 through the mid-20s, right? So there's this window of time where, teenagers are going through puberty, their bodies are changing, there's going to be a lot of body image. And so what we've tried to do is really, I actually use the balance plate a lot with my kids. And so kind of like, if they want something fun, that I respect that, it's like, but can we balance it out? So I try not to associate it with good, bad, but more of balance. And so, kind of just saying, can you balance out your lunch choices, or can you, if you're going to go with your friends, and because now they're independent, I mean, they can go and do what they want to do. But it's interesting because encouraging them to continue to listen to their body and say, how does your body feel? And letting them learn those lessons about how they're fueling. Well, how is your energy when you eat certain ways? How is it when you balance things out a little bit more? And how can you continue to encourage mindful eating? So a lot of times, again, eating slowly, savoring, encouraging that behavior is huge, because then we're satisfied with less. And then, a lot of times that will equal out. But you do want to be really respectful, that if you have any concerns of an eating disorder, that you seek out, professional support as soon as you can, just because you want to give, those young teenagers or young adults as much support as possible. So how do we help them reconnect? How can we talk about the balanced plate as helping them to have a rhythm? All of us need to have a rhythm, right? We feel better when we have some kind of pattern to the way that we eat. It doesn't have to be rigid. The plate is nice because you can choose which fruit, which vegetable, which protein. There's no rules around what, right? So it's more about giving teenagers autonomy of choice. This is a huge age where they're wanting to exert their independence. And so letting them pick that, like, okay, if you want to make your lunch or you want to make dinner, we're actually trying to encourage that. Still working on that one. So you get to cook once a week. I really want them to have those skills before they leave the house. But one of the expectations is, okay, you can pick what you want, but it needs to be balanced. And so they need to think about the protein and the carb and the fruit and the vegetable, or, the healthy fats or whatever it is, or the fun, fats too, whatever they want to create. But we're just trying to get them to think about, how do you balance out that plate when you're planning a meal? It's a great project, especially if you're a busy parent and, they're needing to go to this, that, and the other sport. The one night they're maybe home, let them cook dinner for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. The second to last question. First off, that was awesome. I think that's such an important topic that, I'm only 27 right now and don't have kids and not married or anything like that. But it's something that I've thought about because I've heard other people talk about it, and the approach is just such a hard thing to do. And it's a tough balance to be able to find if you are, because I'm so nutrition conscious now myself, and I'm pretty fine mentally with how I approach food. I binge on whatever I need to binge on when I need to binge on it, whatever. And but finding that approach with kids, especially if like you said, that 11 to 20 age, that mid 20 age is a tough thing to find a balance. So I appreciate you sharing that stuff. But second to last question, to kind of leave with a practical tip, is what are maybe a few foods that you on a weekly basis, and there's probably a ton that you have on a weekly basis, but what are a few top foods, maybe one from each category that you're like, this is definitely something that I get every single week. It's a great healthy protein. It's a great vegetable that I love to have. It's a great healthy fat that I like to try to put on my plate a decent amount.
Oh, definitely. Well, if you ever run into me in the grocery store, I go to bulk fruits and vegetables always. And even if I don't have a plan on how to use them, there's actually a lot of power in diversity. There's a lot of research coming out around the way that diversity of fruits and vegetables, or any plants, really feeds the good bacteria in our gut, and that can reduce inflammation, protect us from disease, help us age well, healthy. So diversity is important. So I do encourage people to kind of think about, when you're opting for your produce, can you buy something from each color? Because each color is going to have different plant or phytonutrients in it. So I do think that diversity is important. So, but I'm always buying, dark leafy greens. You know what I mean? I have usually at least 2 containers in the fridge, and everyone's upset that there's no room for anything else. And so I have my spinach, I have my mixed greens. And I love, purple is a very anti-inflammatory color. So I typically will buy purple cabbage and also blueberries or blackberries. And if it's winter, because I'm located in Minnesota, then I will opt for frozen varieties just to kind of mix into smoothies, or, my son will even eat them just frozen with a spoon and loves them that way. So I try to do some kind of berries here, seasonal always. I always encourage people, there's power in every different kind of fruit. There's different health benefits. So don't, get caught up in one specific, it's really, again, the culmination of what you do overall. So trying to protect that blue or purple is a little bit trickier. So that's why the purple cabbage or the blueberries, blackberries is a little bit easier. Dark leafy greens for sure. Proteins, I love fish. You know what I mean? And so just trying to encourage people to get familiar with salmon or cod or tuna, and it can be easy. I mean, if it needs to be, canned tuna that you can make into a quick wrap or on a salad, there's a lot of different ways that you don't necessarily need to take on cooking and feel overwhelmed again. Right. I also love beans. So I think there's a lot of health benefits of incorporating beans in your diet. So typically I'll buy chickpeas, which I can easily, if I don't have time to cook them myself, then I will buy, the organic chickpeas, rinse them off, throw them on a salad, and incorporate beans pretty quickly in a diet that can serve as part of my protein needs as well, right? So kind of thinking about opting for different legumes. That would also include nuts and seeds. So, trying to incorporate a variety of nuts and seeds is another wonderful protein and healthy fat. So whether it's chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, almonds, again, variety, pistachios are amazing on salads. Just trying to kind of encourage that diversity of choice. Those are some of the foods that I tend to prioritize.
Awesome. Great. I love it. Well, before asking the last question, Kim, I just want to acknowledge you for first of all, just the education and information that you provided today. I know it's going to provide so much value to everybody listening. And I also want to acknowledge you for approaching the nutrition conversation and parenting style with your 14 and 15-year-old in the way that you do right now, to where you do not necessarily shove it down their throat. You promote balance and making sure you have a balanced plate and getting them to cook. And when you do sit down at the dinner table together, to approach it in the right way and not make it authoritative, but make it fun. And I think that's going to go a long way in their relationship with food and their relationship with cooking and everything like that. So I know that that's going to be powerful for especially a lot of the parents and maybe soon to be or future parents out there. And hopefully they take some notes and apply that for themselves and their kids down the road. Very good. Well, and also before the last question, I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to maybe go learn more about you and some of the things that you do and some of your work. So is there a good website or any social media or any good articles that maybe we could send them to kind of take the next step in maybe educating themselves and hopefully implementing that into something practical?
Yes. So I work with a women's health clinic, and so we have multiple health education videos. They're, between 30 and 60-minute seminars that I've given, and that is at oakdaleobgyn.com. I'm also on LinkedIn professionally, and you can also reach me through Orangetheory. There is a medical advisory board opportunity to connect with us there as well. And then just to learn more, I really encourage, especially for those that are really fitness minded, I love all of these different studies. It's very intriguing. So I am constantly reading. I mean, nutrition is evolving always, all the time, right? I mean, you're never done learning. So having that really, open-minded curiosity, but then like feeling empowered to personalize this for you. But if you're interested in the consensus of the research, which is where I think there's a lot of value. The International Society for Sports Nutrition has summary statements that are so helpful, and they will speak to protein spacing. They'll talk about different diets related to how it impacts body composition. And they really try to take more of that meta-analysis, or kind of like that global view of where are all of these studies at and what's the consensus at this time. So I find a lot of value watching ISSN, also ACSM. There are going to be wonderful articles and resources there. And of course, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And so they all have position statements. And so that way you can trust that this is looking at the research as a whole. Because I think sometimes with these studies, or, when we hear about different diet plans, it's really easy to get drawn into the details of one. You need to really back up and say, okay, well, but who were the people in the study? I mean, were they women? Were they men? How old were they? And there's so many different factors that if you want more of that global perspective, I would look at some of the position statements. And that's really how we work at Orangetheory on the medical advisory board, is how do we appreciate the science as a whole and make the best evidence-based recommendations that we can.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go International Society of Sports Nutrition. That's what you said, right? Perfect. I will make sure to go check that out. Great. I'm going to get knee deep in those articles today, probably. Anyways, on to the last question here, Kim. I think that getting closer to the best version of ourselves is both a constant journey and a unique journey. I think the way that I'm going to get closer to the best version of myself is a little bit different than the way that you're going to get closer to the best version of yourself. So for you personally, if there are 3 things that you can currently do or 3 things that you can currently work on to get closer to the best version of yourself, to get closer to that best version of Kim Plessel that you could possibly be, then what are those 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on?
Well, I just alluded a little bit to just take that beginner's mind. Always be open to learning new things. Continue to read and just, learn throughout your life. There's great opportunity there. So I really do commit to staying on top of the different research, but also just, reading for personal joy. That's why I love some of your podcasts, because there's such a multifaceted approach to wellness, right? Like I love learning about different factors that will all help to elevate wellness, right? So learning through the last 2 years, I've really finally been able to really truly have a yoga practice that I commit to. And so I feel like I've spent enough time that now I'm a little bit better about figuring out how to protect that pattern. I don't know if my enthusiasm will encourage my running husband and son to try this with me for their own wellness journey. But I come up and I'm like, oh, I feel amazing. So yoga is just a groundedness. Plus, it's so healthy when you're an active person. You know what I mean? It's just going to help balance out these amazing Orangetheory workouts that we're going to, or whatever else you're doing for physical activity. And then the third thing that I am intrigued by and currently really trying to embed into my daily routine is just a 5 or 10 minute meditation. And so, as I get older, it's how can I land or even begin my day? I'm thinking that I'll probably embed that more consistently at night. That's what I've been doing recently. But I really want that to become a pattern because it helps us to stay grounded on the gratitude for everything, right? That we have, our bodies, our families, our health, and just gives clarity. How do I want to move ahead in the days and the years ahead?
That's awesome. Three great things right there, Kim. I know a lot of people got a lot of great value today. So you guys, if you did not take notes during that episode and write some things down because she shared some amazing things, and make sure you go back and do so. Make sure you share it with a friend or family member who is on their nutrition journey right now and maybe struggling or trying to figure something out, or maybe stress eating, or maybe not exactly sure what they should be putting on their plate or what they should be snacking on. Make sure you send them this episode. They're going to want to hear it so they can start applying some of these things. But Kim, that's all we got today. I really appreciate it. I know everybody loved it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I was so honored to contribute to the conversation, and just best wishes with everything that you're doing to support everyone's wellness.
Thanks. I appreciate it.